I will call to order the Joint Public Infrastructure and Utilities and Public Safety Committee meeting. It is Wednesday, September 27th, 2023 at 3:33 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Alderman Balmer. Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
Alderman Browning.
Here.
Alderman Aldrich. Chair Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys.
Here.
Alderwoman Velasquez.
Here.
Alderwoman Tanya. Alderman Aldrich.
Present again.
Sorry, Alderman Narayan.
Here.
We have 8 present. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing that we have nothing in items 3, 4, or 5 of the agenda, we will dispense with those and move on to committee discussions. To open this committee, I wanted to just say, first of all, Chairman Narayan of the Public Safety Committee and I had been talking about questions we were getting at neighborhood association meetings about the materials of stop signs that have been breaking and the news that had been coming out about corrugated plastic stop signs as opposed to the regular metal signs and what was going on there. So in order to be as transparent as possible, we thought we should host a committee meeting with both of our committees, as we both recognize that sometimes these public infrastructure items, these topics are also public safety topics. When a stop sign breaks, is misshapen or warped or bent, it can affect the safety on the road. So we thought it incumbent upon us to hold the meeting together in order to make sure that that importance and that public safety and traffic safety are connected was really displayed here during this topic. So I know we have some people from the streets department to speak and the administration as well. So I don't believe we need to swear people in from the administration to speak. So I will go ahead and just kind of ask Director Williams if you can give us a background history of what had been going on with why we have some of these plastic corrugated signs that are on our streets now. Any information you can give us about how many there are, the locations, all of that, and just give you an opportunity to speak and share this streets department story on all of this before moving through the committee for questions.
Okay, well, first, thank you all for this opportunity. One, to share on this topic that came to myself and Jamie's attention. I'm gonna say maybe about a month ago, month and a half, maybe at the max. About the material that was used for stop signs around the city. I am going to allow Jamie to do most of the talking because I tasked him, not only because he is the traffic commissioner, but he is the one that did the reporting, that was able to report back to me on the findings of what was going on and the type of material that was used. So I will let Jamie go into those details about that. But I did want to first say that, you know, these signs are something that we've identified in the streets department, the type of material that was used in the streets department, and we have stopped using that material. But to get more into the details, that's what I'll let Jamie talk about, those detailed questions that you were asking. I'll let him go in detail, but I want to make sure that it's perfectly clear that we have stopped using that type of material, because what we have found from these historic winds, historic weather conditions we've had here in the city of St. Louis over this past year, that we have not seen the number of them, as well as the rate of speed of the winds and flooding and all of that we've had within the last year here in the St. Louis area. So because of that, we've pivoted and made some adjustments to the sign materials that we are using for all of our signs across the city, as well as Jamie, please follow through with how we plan to move forward with the current signs that are there. And then we'll go from there with questions and answers. So I'll turn it over to Jamie Wilson, who is now our traffic commissioner.
Hi, can you guys hear me okay? Chairperson, okay.
Yes.
So yeah, historically in the city, we used aluminum signs way back when. A lot of times those got vandalized or damaged as well, but stolen a lot of times for scrap money. Then the city went over and transitioned to fiberglass as our sign backing, as people weren't stealing those obviously for the scrap like they were the aluminum. So we had someone on city contract for that. They actually stopped making fiberglass signs, discontinued that practice. So that's when the option of plastic came up as an alternative, again, to where we've come so far from starting with aluminum. So that was back maybe in 2019 or so, or 20, that there was a city contract put out for plastic, the corrugated plastic material that you see. Then last year when we had a flash flood incident in the street department that destroyed the facility, including our sign shop, we had no more ability to make those signs. So we switched over to another contract that the state had that we were able to piggyback on, where we now have aluminum signs. We've been using aluminum signs for, I guess, over a year now. And I, at this point, have no intention to go back on that. Where the contract is a valid one and the prices are good and we're able to afford it. We'll likely still have the theft being an issue for scrap. But again, we replace signs all the time that are, whether they're aluminum or the fiberglass could be considered brittle and they break too as well. The plastic signs we're seeing maybe didn't hold up as much over time with the weather conditions, mostly is that water gets in those gaps and those voids inside the material and it breaks it down and has less ability to withstand, the winds. You see some of that warping. I think each sign material backing has its own pros and cons, but really to me right now, it's a moot issue since we're on aluminum and we'll just stay on that for the foreseeable future here. So we probably had a year and a half or so of using that plastic material. The material itself is fine. It's just over the course of time if it gets damaged. But like I said, we have damages to whatever backing we have, whether it's fiberglass or aluminum. So just like those, all three materials, if we have any damages reported, we'll just replace them with our aluminum signs now. It's going to be phased out over time with that new aluminum sign. So that's kind of our approach to going forward with that.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I will start with.
To add one more thing.
Go ahead.
Jamie, if you could kind of you spoke to the backing of the sign. Could you walk this committee through the process of how a stop sign, the stop sign, what they actually see in the backing, and maybe how it's printed, or even speak to the reflectivity of the sign material, no matter what the backing is, or is there some type of difference in that? Could you speak to that for us?
Right. Yeah. Good point. I was more concentrated on the backing, but yeah, the whether it's fiberglass blank we got or an aluminum blank we got or the plastic blanks we got, they're still put the sheeting, the reflective sheeting, that engineered sheeting on it. That's that high visibility reflectivity that's required per guidelines for it. So at all points in all three different materials that we used, the same federal guidelines for sheeting are used in terms of reflectivity. So the ones we actually get now, and that's for when we made our own signs, all three material backings, we did the same reflective sheeting. The signs we get now are ready-made aluminum with the sheeting already put on them. So they come right out of the box and ready to install. So, and that's the way we're operating currently.
Okay, thank you very much. I will run through some questions here. I'll start with the chairperson of Public Safety, Alderman Narayan, if you have questions.
Thank you, Chair Schweitzer, and thanks to everyone from the street department for being here for this. As Alderman Schweitzer noted, there was a news article about this, and then I've gotten a lot of phone calls and people at various community meetings asking about it. And then it's one of those things that once you notice it, you see it more often. I was like, oh, a lot of these stop signs are curling. A lot of these stop signs are, missing a piece. It does sound, and the streets department is in the fourth ward, so I'm acutely aware of the flash flooding that you had there, and that it really took things offline for quite some time and led to a whole lot of issues as we moved forward out of that flooding. So I'm more asking these questions just so that I have an answer to give people at neighborhood associations when they call me on the phone, things like that. So I know this started in 2020 or so. And do we know how many of these plastic signs that we've installed, even a rough number?
I'm not even sure the data we have is that granular that we could determine that with what we have. But I mean, in general, we have about 12,000 a year service requests that come through CSB, public complaints, for the traffic division overall. I would say about a third of those are related to signs. So call that 4,000 service requests a year related to signs. But that's from a leaning pole to a sign that's knocked down to, it could be everything. So I would say less than half of those would end up being related to actual new sign being installed versus just correcting a leaning pole or a crooked sign. So maybe 1,000 or 2,000 a year have been new signs. But I would say over the course of using the plastic, there's maybe a couple thousand out there.
Okay, and were we tracking the locations of the plastic signs as they were installed? Was it like a stopgap measure that we always intended to go back and put a more permanent sign in, or was it just that we thought that they were going to hold up longer than they do?
When they chose the material, I'm sure they assumed it would last longer. I think that's just something we figured out over time here. Now that I'm here, that we've seen some of those, and honestly, we have not had many, if not, I think this was the first one brought to my attention that was this warped that needed a replacement. But I did want to make a point. I forgot this during the original. You just reminded me is probably the folks that are talking to you may have seen the first article and maybe not the second one, or maybe they saw both. But the first one, there was some slight misinformation that got out that we were using cardboard signs as a temporary measure during the flood that happened here. That it was just, I think some signals got crossed there. We never use cardboard ever in the city. That's paper, so once people hear that, it's hard to unhear it. So that's probably what you'll hear a lot too. But it was hardened plastic corrugated material, but that was used before the flood. The flood killed our sign shop. So then we went to aluminum on contract because we couldn't make our own. So for over a year, we've been using aluminum without the intention of going back. But yeah, we're seeing those didn't hold up to the test of time. And I guarantee when the city first got into that several years ago, they envisioned they'd last a lot longer than that. So, and again, I can't say enough that the aluminum ones have issues, the fiberglass ones have issues. Any of the three that I just mentioned can be vandalized in a number of different ways. So our best bet is as those reports come in, and you can tell if your constituents that are talking to you, if there's, instead of flooding you with a text about a warped sign, to just hit our Citizen Service Bureau. I like having just that one clearinghouse versus emails or text or whatever, phone calls even, for the public to report those public service issues, so we can keep it in one area and they can keep track of their CSB, the status, and we can have it in one spot to be able to manage that data as far as the services we provide.
Thank you for that. And then with I've seen, you know, they curl in the sun, they break in the wind. What do we know what people should be expecting out of these signs when we get, you know, a few months out, when we get back into, you know, sub-freezing temperatures?
I think overall, I mean, without, again, like I said, it's the first time it's been reported to me, but it's honestly, it's like, I think you may have said it too, you start noticing the things, but it's like you're going to buy a new car and all of a sudden on the way home, you start noticing that car on the highway everywhere. So now it's popping up everywhere. And you find yourself staring at it when you're sitting at a stop sign or a traffic signal or something like that. But we have not had these issues recently. Material has been fine to this point. So I think we're starting to see the damages, and the folks that are in those neighborhoods and see this stuff every day and see these issues along with any other city services, that please report it to us so we can get our eyes on it and determine what needs to be done for that, whether it's the plastic or any of the other stuff. It's hard for us to, obviously, whether we had a full staff or not, you can't see these signs all the time in every place in the 60 square miles of the city. So please report it so we can get out there.
Okay, yeah, and that gets to my last question, you know, and just the plans to replace these as they move forward. I think it's important that we make a real effort to replace them rather than to let them fail just because they are stop signs. And so if someone has one of these signs and they start to see some of that warping or you know, discoloration, anything like that, do you expedite those the stop sign requests in general, just based on the nature of the fact that it is a stop sign?
Yes, through that public interface online, the system prompts the user for that information. Is it a sign? Yes. Is it a stop sign? Yes. Well, then it goes over and it classifies that as a critical sign for us on our side, and those are addressed. Probably the data would support that one. Probably the same day we'll get something out there, even if it's a temporary stop sign on an easel. If we get a report of a stop sign missing, that's a type of priority that gets, as it's obviously you know, one-way signs, stop signs, that type of stuff. Those are very important signs. Do not enters. Those are the type of signs that are qualified in the system as critical, and that as such they get the priority and our attention first. While we want to get to a street name sign, that doesn't quite hold the same water that a stop sign does. So, but again, yeah, if they report that, it will be in critical signs. It'll be looked at immediately. Thankfully, that the sheeting that's been put on, we have had no issues with the reflectivity on that. So even with the weather, it's the same material that was put on before. It's mostly the backing. So you probably see more of the warping more than you will see anything with the reflectivity or the actual messaging on the sign itself. So both are issues, but one I think is even more critical is that reflectivity. So thankfully that part is just fine. It's the actual warping part that we're gonna have to deal with. But yeah, report those, and sooner we get our eyes on them, the better.
Okay, yeah, well then I'll just tell all the folks out walking dogs and running and all that to keep an eye on these signs, and if they see it, let me know, and we'll get them reported to you and get them replaced with new signs. And that's all I have. Thank you all for your time today.
We
Thank you.
encourage reporting in CSB. That's how we hold our employees accountable, CSB. You can email us. Yes, we're not saying that, but the best way is through CSB.
Okay, I'm going to continue going through sort of a combined seniority list for the two committees. I don't see Alderman Vollmer or Alderman Oldenburg. So the next alder person in order of seniority is Alderman Clark Hubbard.
No questions. Thank you, Streets Department, for being. Thank you, Commissioner and Director. A lot of the questions that I probably would even thought of were answered directly. And I would like to say that when I put in CSB about those signs, especially those main arterial signs, they do put out the signs immediately on the horses or come out there and tack on or whatever they need to do. So again, I do want to echo the importance of putting it on CSB and then having us probably follow up. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Keys.
Thank you. Alderman Narayan kind of covered everything. So thank you for that. But one thing I did want to, for starters, thank you, Jamie and Bethany and Nancy for being here today. And it's good to put faces with names. Additionally, the biggest concern that I seem to get is that there is foliage. So we probably can or should, have forestry to just speak to, getting the foliage cut away, sometimes, which are obstructions to people actually seeing the signs. Not that everybody's stopping, but we do want to give them an opportunity to clearly see the sign and have the opportunity to stop and pause for a moment for safety's sake. So thank you all for the work that you do. And I have nothing further.
Thank you, Alderman. Actually, Vice Chair Browning.
Thank you. Thank you to Chairwoman Schweitzer and Chairman Narayan for calling this joint meeting today. I do appreciate the acknowledgement of the intersection of public safety and street safety. I think that's something that a lot of people in the city are feeling right now. I really appreciate the Streets Department, both Ms. Williams and Mr. Wilson, for coming out today and answering these questions. It really helps clear up some of the misinformation that was out there. And I think that'll help a lot when we're dealing with our constituents. Alderman Narayan did really cover it well. So I'm going to ask one last question, which is the issue of graffiti on signs. Obviously, we should be reporting that via CSB as well. But do we find that a certain sign material is easier to clean and easier to maintain rather than full replacement with the issue of graffiti or vandalism, stickers, paint, whatever it may be?
Not really any detailed story on that kind of variety of different ways to vandalize or graffiti these signs, but we do our best effort to clean it up. And if it's more work than if the juice is not worth the squeeze, then we're just replacing the sign and bring it back here and maybe put a little more elbow grease into it. But otherwise, just do our best to clean it up. If not, just replace it.
Okay, and so now that we've switched back to aluminum, I understand we switched away from aluminum in the first place because there was an issue with theft. Was there any other reason for the switch, or was it mainly theft? And, I'm concerned with the switch back that we're just really back to square one. Are we looking at additional materials for maybe a better or cheaper sign in the future, or is this just going to be what it is because we've got a good contract right now?
Yeah, so the aluminum was way back when. It was way before my time here, as to why. But I even spoke to someone today that was at MoDOT way back in the day, and they had issues with their signs getting stolen in the city as well that were aluminum. And probably the more we talk about it, the more that people might steal them. But it's still going to be an issue. But at this point, until we can keep our eyes open for another material for this, the aluminum signs are by far the more mainstream, I would say, of sign to find. You'll see like St. Louis County doing it, and the contract we're on is MoDOT's contract, which I almost swear the county uses as well. So it's a very common contracted material. So we'll probably just keep using it. But yeah, we'll keep our eye out for something else, and obviously keep in mind the long-term effects, and cost will always be an issue as well. But you weigh that with how much you have to maintain these, and if they're getting warped every 2 or 3 years, and it's probably more. It might be worth more to spend a little more for material that lasts a dozen or 20 years. So just something we'll have to keep our eyes open for.
Okay, that's good. And I do hope that if anyone is watching this, they're more of the type to report a missing sign or a damaged sign than to steal it. But I will emphasize to my constituents that CSB is the way to report any damaged signs, and hopefully we can get any of these, I don't want to call them defective, but lesser quality signs replaced as quickly as possible through the help of our citizens reporting them. So thank you again for coming and answering questions today. I really appreciate it. And I'll pass the mic back to Alderwoman Schweitzer.
Thank you. Alderwoman Velasquez.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Schweitzer, and thank you also Chairman Narayan, and Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Williams. I think my colleagues have summed it up, but just quick question. Do we know of any other cities or anything that had used this other kind of material before? I mean, just out of curiosity.
I personally don't. I wasn't involved in when they looked at that material at this point, I'm out of morbid curiosity. I may just check the provider of the previous city contract and see if they, if they knew other clients or all that kind of stuff, I haven't even jumped on the internet to look at anything yet. To me, while it was a moot point we're on aluminum, it was almost taking the time to go back in time and see if there was other people that use it. But off the top of my head, I do not know without having to do some research.
Well,
I don't believe we were their first. I don't believe we started anyone's venture into traffic signs when we did the city contract, but I just don't know who the clients were.
Okay. Yeah, I think more out of morbid curiosity or similar curiosity than anything else. I don't have any other questions other than that. I will just echo the use of CSB, and thank you all for being here to answer all these questions.
Thank you, Alderman. Vice Chair Public Safety, Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you. Sorry, I was getting my computer together. Thank you, Madam Chair of the Public Safety Committee for calling this together, as well as Chairman Narayan of Public Safety. I feel like we're just becoming a little echo box here, like a singing group, but also want to echo, I think the Chairman of Public Safety probably asked a lot of questions. I do have one, and I know, also I want to thank Commissioner Williams and also Street Commissioner Wilson for being here, and Director of Operations, Ms. Cross from the Mayor's Office, for also being here to answer our questions. Understanding that, like Alderman Browning said, the intersection between infrastructure and public safety, I think is sometimes they cross a lot. So this meeting is very important. I know Commissioner Williams, you kind of answered, kind of cleared up the myth that, from maybe an article that was put out there that some of these signs aren't cardboard. And I will be putting in a request myself. I was out yesterday with my staff and DPS as we're just looking at wards to do some infrastructure upgrades. And I was at Hebert and Garrison on the north side. And it's funny, as we was walking, we seen one of these signs that I guess is more the plastic ones before you guys moved back to the aluminum just recently. And as you said, the inside of it it was warped. So I'm going to need a request before it falls off. But I know you said the outside is plastic. Is the inside of the sign, as we was looking in it, because you was able to see, it looked like it was cardboard material. So is the outside plastic and the inside, or where the plastic sit on, a cardboard material?
It's all plastic. It does have that appearance though, as you look in this as the side with the gaps, it looks like cardboard, but it's not paper, it's plastic, but just is corrugated, just like paper cardboard is, just plastic. Okay. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense, because the way that, how when cardboard gets wet, it has like that wrinkly kind of look to it. And then the inside of that one, it had that same look. But outside of that, since this is a public meeting, it's always important, like you say, to let them know if there are issues going on with your stop signs. Please report it to CSB. You can either do that via Twitter or you can call, but please make sure you report those. Our street department, I've worked with Commissioner Wilson and Commissioner Williams, and they are very responsive and get on top of these. So if you do have an issue, please put it out to CSB. I appreciate you guys for being in front of us.
Thank you, Vice Chair Aldridge. I see Alderman Valmer has joined. Do you have any questions for the Streets Department regarding the sign materials?
No, none whatsoever. Sorry for the delay, but I was in something I could not get out of. It wasn't jail.
Well, thanks for joining us.
All right.
I think I hit everyone. Any other aldermen? I don't see any other aldermen here, so I think I got everyone from both committees. I want to echo what the Alderman Shameen Clark Hubbard has her hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yes, just before you close out, I just got a message while we're on this meeting. And it's something that I haven't asked before, but I didn't follow up on. What are the chances, or have we considered any of the signs that are illuminated for any of our intersections? And that could be for Director Williams or Commissioner Wilson, or if it can't be answered now, if you could just let me know so that I can take it back.
We did, we tried one, I believe you're talking about the LED ones that are lit on the outsides. We tried one on River to Pear, where there's a stop sign that's in the middle of basically nowhere of what you feel like is a River to Pear highway. We tried one there. Obviously, those are higher priced, well priced over our normal signs. And those obviously require some power to them, so they're solar. You won't in my lifetime see that spread anywhere across the city, but not to say that if there's special circumstances dictate extra attention somewhere, that they won't be used. Obviously, if you put them everywhere, they have no effect because they don't stand out at all. So I think what you're going to see is in very extreme cases where no other measures could be used, something like that has to be pursued. But there's a lot of tools in the toolbox, and that's still in there.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you. I do see that Director Cross has her hand up. You're welcome to speak.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I just want to say thank you for all of your comments. And I think the staff appreciates hearing that they are doing a good job. We have been, and the fact that you all keep reinforcing the CSV is extremely important because those are the metrics that we're using. And even for the trees to be cut down around Alderwoman Keys, around the stop signs, if those go into CSV, we can get those cut as well, because we have additional staff. And there's one last thing, because there's almost 10 of you on the, 8 or 9 of you on this committee that I just want to mention. It doesn't have to do with the street signs, but it's important in that since there's so many of you here at this meeting, we just want to remind you that Commissioner Flake sent out a notice requesting for you all to let him know in your wards if you are accepting the list of streets that he has for you to have paved, or if there are changes that you want to make. And to date, we've only heard back from one alderperson out of 14 plus the president doesn't have a district, but from 14 of you as to what you want us to do. And right now, the problem is that we're ending paving season. So the sooner that you can get your requests in, we can begin to line up the calendar for the beginning of paving season in the spring. But we need that information. We cannot pave the streets through the STL Works money unless you tell us what you want to have paid in your wards. And some of you have much bigger areas than you used to have. But all of you should have that email. We can have Commissioner Flake call you again. You could say, I'm fine with this, or I have these changes, but we need those back sooner rather than later so we can be ahead of the game in the spring to do paving on the street. So thank you all for your time today.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I appreciate that. I'd love to have Commissioner Flake come and speak to our committee as well soon about all of those requests. I understand that, you know, from conversations with the streets department, that those requests are put in through CSB as well, and not necessarily based on any sort of paving plan or ranking of the streets that are happening. So I would love to have a more open conversation with everyone about how we get streets on that list to begin with. I appreciate that.
With all due respect, Chairwoman, it would be most helpful if people respond to the Ken Flake's email, and then he works with each one individually, because we want to get him out with people, driving around, looking at streets if necessary, so we can be ready to go in the spring. And while he can come and bring all that material to you all have a copy of the list for your specific wards. And we thinking from an operational standpoint, that's the best way to get this done. Most
For
of you may
this-
say, yes, pave all those streets. He's fine to come anytime. I'm not saying he shouldn't come and talk with you. I'm just saying that in our preparation for getting the work done, they're getting ready for winter season. The sooner we can get alder people to tell us what we need them to do about paving in the spring, the better it will be in the long run for all of us, because we'll know where we're starting right away. And then you'll have the information to be able to give to your constituents that that's where the streets are going to be paved in 2024. So.
Thank you. I think that, we do want to have a long-term plan for street paving. That's not just an email we get in the end of August and needing to approve going forward quickly. The combination of the complete streets policy with that paving list as well is something that I think we need to discuss. Because I know I sent my list to the Board of Public Service and asked like what conversation had happened here, and it hadn't happened yet. So I appreciate that, and I'll remind my colleagues to please get back to Commissioner Flake about that. So I do see we have a few aldermen who might have some comments there. Alderman Aldred, I did see your hand first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is, I guess, a question, kind of more of a new member. So what is the Director across the paving schedule? So like you say, we'll approve these or not. And I know it's getting cold, so the paving will happen. When will those paving may start in 2024?
I would like us to have a very mild winter. Jamie and Bethany would tell you that's not going to happen. But if we did, we would start earlier. But I think Director Williams may be better at answering exactly when they go out to do it. But when the ground isn't frozen anymore. So
typically over the winter months, that is when they start preparing to start, hopefully, fingers crossed, late March. We start seeing a break in the weather where we can start our paving. And the more projects we have on the list, then I'm able to ask for your 10 paving projects this week. When those roll off, what are the next 10? Where are we going? Where should I see pavers across the city? That type of thing we can do. So in some cases, it may be more of a straighter shot. It may be through 2 wards, but it may be one arterial that we can just pave, continuous. So if we have that information, we can kind of do more scheduling that's more cost effective and efficient for the staff when they go out and do their paving operations. So I did want to, and I feel like we probably got off subject here a little bit, but as far as the paving is concerned, we are looking to change the approach of how we do paving in the city of St. Louis, less on just because someone has submitted a request and more of prioritizing the pavements. The list that went out this year, because we had alders that were requesting the list, they wanted to know what was in the coffer, who is putting in requests. We gave you all what we had. Moving forward, it is my hope that we can get to a place with hiring a pavement specialist that will be able to evaluate pavements for us moving forward.
And I have
Thank
2 more
you.
questions.
You have more questions? Sure.
Yes, I know, like you say, we're not talking about stop signs, but it's all public infrastructure and public safety, right? So the second question is, it with coming in new, this is a list of streets that was added before I guess I got here. Is it okay to add streets to reach out to Commissioner Flake to add streets, or is these kind of the priority ones that you guys are looking at for?
Most definitely, because ultimately, currently, you still have a say in the streets that are paved as the alderperson. And so because of that, you can say, this is not a priority, or part of the reason too why we're saying they will go out and ride with you between Commissioner Flake or either one of our superintendent or someone from the paving crew will do ride-alongs with you so that you can see and evaluate the condition of these pavements. We understand that they're just a request and it's really nothing scientific behind it. So when we put eyes on it with you, you can say yes or no, this is more of a priority. Hey, I've got a lot of calls about this block. Can we look at this block? This is one I really want to get paved. A number of residents have complained about it. And so this is something I want to add to the list. So definitely you can add to the list. That's the reason in the give and take of the list. Like we send it to you, what we've gotten, and then you can respond adding or subtracting from that.
Definitely appreciate that. And then last question, Commissioner, I would be reaching out to Mr. Flake for that ride along and get this list as soon as possible and do my part and be held accountable. Other question is not paving, but is this usually the same timing when it's warm where like speed humps are also implemented? Is that, do you guys do that around that same timing?
Jamie, do we do speed humps year round? I'm not for sure if that contract's year round or not. But I mean, in any cold weather conditions, when you're dealing with asphalt or pavement, you know, you have temperatures on different types of mix. But Jamie, maybe you can speak to more if that contract is more year round or not. I'm not for sure for speed humps.
Alderman, I could circle back with you more detail on this, but it does kind of, there's still asphalt's asphalt, so they're still paving. They're going to be wrapping up this this October as well, and then come back in the spring when weather's more conducive for that paving for those. But I'd send an email about the process for those speed humps. But if it's not on the list, that's the way to get it on the list. And then I can talk to you more detail about that once we get out.
I'll give you a call. I know we
Yeah,
gotta talk about something, so I'll give you a call. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, for sure.
All right, I know everyone probably has paving questions now. I do want to be aware that this meeting was not meant to be a paving conversation, although I'm very happy it was brought up, so we can talk about it. The thing I think would be the most helpful if Streets could provide to us, you know, timelines of when you need the list finalized from each ward in order to go forward in a contract that will begin in the spring. That would be a very helpful timeline to have for all of us. And then I'll go through.
Oh yeah, not to cut you off, sorry, Madam Chairman, but that is what I've asked Kent to do, is send out a follow-up email with dates.
That's great. Thank you so much for doing that. That's very helpful.
Encouraging this information to come back.
Yeah. All right, I believe Alderwoman, or I think actually Alderman Browning had his hand up first, and then Alderman Keys.
Thank you. And I also don't want to take too much time and stray too far into other topics, but I do want to ask about clarification for funding for this. I think one of the reasons, and I can only speak for myself, but one of the reasons I didn't jump right on emailing is because I had a list of $1 million worth of paving, and I don't have $1 million worth of ward capital. I will never have that. So there's a question as, and then I did hear later that there might be St. Louis Works money available for some of the projects. So I guess my question is, can we get some further clarification on where the funding would come from before we can authorize these projects? Because that to me is the main consideration before I'm saying go. And then I have one more question, but I'll start with that.
So those funds will come from your St. Louis Works funds as well as your ward capital. That's why when I said earlier about it's still up to you to prioritize the roads that are being paved in your ward, because you have to budget and balance and identify where those funds are coming from to be utilized in either account that it comes out of. You still have to allocate what you want to assign to paving for that year. And okay. I think that's when Ken, I know when Ken is doing these ride arounds and you're able to say, okay, I have 50 roads on my list. We've identified the worst 10, he can give you a price on those. And then once you get a price on those, then you can identify where those funds can come from that you want to spend.
Okay, thank you. And I do travel around my ward a lot, so I ride along with myself every day. And I'm well aware of where the problem spots are, and we also hear from the constituents. I think part of my issue is that Alders shouldn't be deciding this at all. Like, I think this is your purview and your expertise, and I would really, that's another discussion for another day, but I'd really like to discuss how we can empower the streets department to take care of our streets and do their jobs and really leave it to the expertise. Same with speed humps. The other question I had is introduction of additional traffic calming. I'll use an example right now. I have Lindell, a big section of Lindell in the 9th Ward. It's in terrible condition. It needs to be repaved. I hear about it all the time, and it's a huge priority for me. I'm very conscious, though, that if I get it repaved, it's going to become a highway. And people are going to go dangerously fast on it, and we will probably lose lives if it is just a smooth surface from beginning to end. So I am waiting to pull the trigger on that, one, for money. It's not just safety, but it's also money. But I'm also looking to do traffic calming at the same time as we do that. And I don't know how to initiate the conversation about doing a long-term traffic study of that area and get the paving done in an expeditious manner, because I believe the traffic study is something we contract out for. Is that correct?
We do, or Jamie can speak to it too, but we do some internal, but some we make recommendations for a consultant to do traffic calming studies. I think that's a discussion. Maybe we can put a mark or add it to the list that BPS could probably provide this committee with an update on where they are with the safety plan for the city, the mobility plan, how they plan to tie in traffic studies for each individual ward, studies that have been done already. How do they anticipate to utilize those into developing the master plan? So, you know, the streets department, yes, we see all of this as, oh, it's streets, but we maintain what BPS bills and what planning provides to BPS for us to maintain. We do have some things internal that we're able to do just because we have a PE on staff. Jamie's here, traffic's his passion. You know, we have the ability to do some things in-house, but really and truly, those are all things that should be done on a contract outside of our services. And then we're here to provide what has historically happened. What are we seeing? Those types of things. But I think maybe that's a discussion, Madam Chairwoman, that we can.
Yeah, I'll send some dates out to both. I think it makes sense to have this conversation with BPS and streets as well. I think having the list from us from what streets we plan to pursue. I know, like I said, there's some streets on my list that don't, I mean, with our complete streets plan, shouldn't be being repaved without also, I mean, having the considerations for alternative road users and bike lanes and all of that. So I think it's a very overlapping thing. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Any further questions, Alderman Browning?
No, just thank you again for coming here today and speaking with us. I really do appreciate your expertise on the matter and would like to work with you further to make our streets as safe as possible. Thank you.
Alderman Keys?
Thank you. I'd just like to echo the same sentiments of Alderman Browning. I am also concerned about street calming measures as well as street humps, but alleys are also a concern. I have alleys that are in horrible condition. And so I'd like to have some further discussion about is alleys part of the street allocation? Is that something different? And again, as Alderman Browning said, you know, this is in you guys' wheelhouse. And I certainly, for one, would be very comfortable if Streets Division took care of streets, and, you know, that kind of would allow us to, you know, focus on some other things more closely, but because you have the expertise and the knowledge that it takes to get these things done for our citizens. So again, thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you, Alderman Keys. Alderman Velasquez?
Thank you. Well, I'm going to echo Alderman Browning here. I actually have a question. I don't know if it was for Commissioner Williams or I think it or Wilson, but you mentioned if we had a paver or somebody on staff who could, didn't I hear that? That there was a possibility of somebody who could focus on just grading the pavement, or was I just dreaming?
Oh, not a paver, a pavement specialist.
Yes.
Mhm.
So is that
In the works.
it's in the works and it's been budgeted for?
We're looking to move some positions around so that we can budget for that position in the department.
Okay, great. As a new person, I would just like to echo, I've heard of other cities that have, you know, they get a list of basically graded roads and sidewalks that when they come in, and it's not up to the electeds to prioritize. I will defer to you all any day on your expertise, because I've never been an engineer as much as my father probably would have liked me to have been. So I would just really like to see, and even going through that list, I think that's why I paused, because it's a list and I do have over $1 million, of course, and requests for upgrades. But, you know, I feel like there should be something other than me driving around, seeing if it seems like a priority. I mean, there seems like you all know other factors that would make, you know, there has to be some priority in that list. And I would like to see you all really tell us what's the best recommendation. I know that we have to weigh out, you know, citizen requests and things like that, but I mean, you all are the planning, paving, streets experts. I am not. So, you know, I mean, if there's a way that we can help you prioritize this pavement specialist, I am all for it. If there's something that comes up next year with, you know, budget and whatnot, but I do think it's, as this new board looks to, you know, move the city forward and also make decisions in a way that makes sense, having the engineers make those kinds of decisions versus a best guess on my part, I think would be beneficial for everybody in the city.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I have 2 more questions about the street signs, so I appreciate circling back to that. If folks are seeing any of these corrugated plastic signs, should they only report them if they're warping, or are you all trying to replace all of them in anticipation for them? Right. I mean, what's your hope
I
there?
would say just report them if they're damaged.
Okay,
Whether
so if they're
whether they're
fine so far, it's
plastic
fine.
or aluminum or fiberglass, just if they're damaged.
Okay, and was it other street signs as well that were made with this, or just stop signs?
Wasn't clicking off there. All of our signs that were blanks, like one-way signs or do not enter, all those type of signs are not street name signs, but basically all our other signs.
Could have been made with this.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Interesting. I've seen some, you know, broken one-way signs or something like that, and wasn't sure if it was the same material. So just report all of those. We can do that. Unless anyone else has any other questions, or there's any closing remarks that anyone with the streets department or administration would like to make before Alderman Sanye, I see you there. Do you have questions about street signs?
I don't have questions about street signs. I do want to echo what Alderwoman Schweitzer, what Alderwoman Velasquez, what Alderman Browning said as well. I really do feel like we should transition to the experts and the people whose training and specific jobs are to be streets decisions, rather than the elected individuals figuring out for the areas what it is. I just wanted to lift that up and say that I support that as well.
Thank you, Alderwoman. With that, seeing that is, let me go back to our agenda real quick. We don't have any public comment. And Madam Clerk, do we have any written testimony?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Announcements next week during our Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, we'll be having Jennifer Wade with Missouri Department of Transportation speaking to us. She's the regional engineer for the St. Louis region. So we'll be able to answer questions people have on state roads and plans along that. I know in my ward, Gravois is one people ask me a lot of questions about. So please plan on attending that meeting. Alderman Aldridge, do you have an announcement?
More of a question. I know we wasn't taking up board bills today because we had a joint meeting. I know we have a speaker. It sounds like for next week, we'll be taking up any board bills for public
Yes,
infrastructure.
so all the board bills that were held for this meeting will be on the agenda for next week, unless the sponsor requested them for a different meeting.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Any other announcements? Okay. Excused members, I believe everyone from Public Infrastructure and Utilities was here for some point. I don't know if we had any.
Only Oldenburg.
Entertain a motion to excuse Alderman Oldenburg. So moved by Alderman from the 11th, was that correct?
Second with reservations.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 5th. Thank you very much.
Was that Alderwoman Keys that made the move, or was that Clark Hubbard?
Clark
It was
Hubbard.
Clark Hubbard, wasn't it? From the 10th.
I don't know who it was.
Yes, it was Clark Hubbard from the 10th.
Clark
Okay,
Hubbard,
thank you. Thank
yeah.
you, Alderman Clark Hubbard. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, motion carries. Now I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I think we just need a motion and a second for that. And we are adjourned. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to Streets and have a good rest of your day.